Buongiorno a tutti. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to introduce this important presentation of our national plan for teacher training and career development, professional development of our teachers in Italy. I'm going to introduce our outstanding guests coming from different countries and very important international institutions. I'm really very grateful to all of them for being here, for presenting to our audience today, not simply people who are in this room, but so many, I'm so happy for that too, but also many people who can follow us during this conference. The main topics we are discussing about at the international level in the field of teachers training, quality education, and the importance of rethinking the way we learn and teach. I think that this is the main issue, which is the basis of our discussion today also, and this is the ground we worked through 2 years and a half in this country in order to present a new model of education, in order to present to the Italian Parliament a new law which approved last year in July, and we are implementing this month. In my opinion, the presentation, the national plan for teacher training is one of the most important issues, because without very well-trained and very well-motivated teachers, there is no opportunity to have quality education. There is no opportunity to have a school which can drive the change and not be the followers of the change. And I think that the issues you are facing in your institutions and that you are presenting today in our debate should be really a very important reason for us to rethink our model. And I do hope and I do think that we'll find very many connections between the pillars of our Italian national plan and the work we are doing respectively in OECD, in Unesco, and in the Institute of Higher Education and Teacher Trainings of Singapore, which is one of the most important institutions engaged in this field in the world. So I'm going to really say some few words in order to introduce our guests. I should like to start with Professor Oon Seng Tan. He's Dean of Teacher Education at the International Teacher Education for the 21st Century Initiative, which is one of the milestone innovation initiative at global level for teacher education, both at national and international level. I would like to after the speech from Professor Tang, I will give the floor to Andreas Schleicher. He's a very well-known expert of education, and is also one of the main contributors to our Italian discussion. We have already many opportunities to attend some conferences in Italy and elsewhere together, and is Director General of the OECD for Education. And last but not least, of course, we are also very grateful to Professor Naidoo, Jordan Naidoo, who's Director General in UNESCO in Paris for especially in the division for education 2030. You know that for the first time, the fourth Millennium Global Goals in the ranking, the new ranking, looking forward to 20 and 30, is quality education. So UNESCO's two, among the other important international organization, is focusing quite a lot about education, quality education, and open access to this important human right, I should say something like this, because I do believe that education is one of the basic human rights we have, and it's a national and international responsibility to try to assure the most part of population all over the world in open access to quality education. So, Professor Tang, the floor is yours. Thanks again for being here, for your contribution to our discussion. Perché funziona solo il mio? Grazie. Per fortuna che il piano nazionale della scuola digitale l'abbiamo già presentato.
It's very dangerous to sit in the seat of the Minister of Education.
That's true.
Your Excellency, I want to congratulate you for the excellent national plan. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here in Italy. The first time I know much about Italy was when my son had to choose to do his semester exchange on which country he would go. And interestingly, he chose Italy. He came to Bocconi for an exchange program, and he was a fan of Italy. So I will share a little bit about teacher quality through teacher learning and development. As we all know, teacher education is one of the most important investment in the long haul. As you know, the quality of education impacts on nation building, people's capacity for adaptation, value creation, and innovation. And in this 21st century, as educators, we all face this problem of motivating learners in a more globalized world, developing 21st century competencies, which you all have heard a lot, the ability to work in a culturally diverse environment. And I think learning is so important to understanding the need of a new generation. And schools today have to create and maintain strong partnership between homes and schools, because the problems of education are not just a problem of schools only, but also many times the children bring to the school the problems of the home. And so there's an increasing need for educators to understand the communities and work with the communities. So all these competencies call for us to have a much more professionalized teaching workforce. And one of the key points I want to mention is that for a successful professional development, our teacher policies, together with the various institutions, calls for an integration, right? And I think the first thing that I'm very impressed with this national plan is about the very, very integrated approach to the entire teacher development. A good policy of incorporating teacher development bears in mind that the teacher's total development is linked from the point of recruitment to the initial teacher training to the compensation, to the career development structure, and the continuous development. I call this the proximal factors of learning. But in order for teachers to thrive, you really need the ecology for it. And the ecology is about our performance management system, our school leadership, the overall societal understanding of the teacher's status, the teacher's symbolism, I call it. And of course, integrated policy and alignment, and also a future orientation. So I'll describe more about this. But what you can see is that in a good teacher policy, you have a vision going forward. And I'm very impressed here because in Singapore, we have a very small system. Our population is about 5.6 million, and Italy's population is more than 10 times that of Singapore. And for us, having such an initiative, right, for something like 35,000 teachers was already a big challenge. I can imagine such a challenge at this scale in Italy. So it is really very visionary. And I think this unity of vision has to be complemented by a strong communication among the stakeholders. And for it to be successful, you need to have what we call the mediating layers down the line. So this is what we often do in Singapore to ensure we have what we call a coherent system. So the keyword is a kind of an integration and a partnership between the Ministry of Education, the schools, and the training institution. Well, bear in mind that Singapore is a very small system, and that's why we have only one national institute responsible for all the teacher training and development. The next point I want to mention is that a very key factor is time. When you talk to teachers, they will always say that we don't have the time for development. Where are you going to give me the time? Is it the time in the school? Is it the time outside the school? And it's quite interesting. But the key thing is that in order for learning to happen, we all have to spend time. So the time factor is very important in the professionalization of teaching, in enhancing ourselves, and in improving students' learning and transforming schools. So a good conversation of how teachers can be released or teachers can conceptualize having that time for teacher learning is really key. But this is a mindset issue. I tell you a Eastern Kung Fu story. A guy went through his training to get a black belt. He got all his competencies. He met all the various competencies. And then he has to meet one last final interview before he got the black belt. And so he had an interview with the master Kung Fu, the Kung Fu master. And the Kung Fu master said, "What do you understand? What is the black belt?" And he said, "To have the black belt means that I have achieved all the competence. And I have done that." And the master Kung Fu, the Kung Fu master said, "I'm sorry, you are still not ready for the black belt. I think you need another year." So he went back, and then he thought he would build on his competencies again, and this time he asked a few people, what does it take to get a black belt? And people tell him that, it's about the attitude. It's not just the competence, but the attitude, the disposition. So the year later, he went to see the Kung Fu master, and he thought he was ready for the black belt. And of course, the Kung Fu master asked him the same question, and he said that, well, it's the attitude. It's the attitude that this black belt is a signature of achievement, of accomplishment. And the Kung Fu master says, "I'm sorry, please go back and continue your training." The third year he came back, and this time he was much humbler, and the Kung Fu master asked him, "Do you think you are ready for the black belt?" And he bowed his head and says, "I think so, because I learned that the black belt is the symbol of the beginning. This black belt is a symbol that this Kung Fu is about a lifelong learning." And the master said, "Now you can have the black belt." So as black belt teachers, it is about learning. It's not about an accreditation, right? So even in our initial teacher training, we equip the teachers with some of these key competence, the holistic education, integrating theory and practice, right? And understanding this whole concept of mentoring. In fact, when I saw in the national plan, the use of e-portfolio, I was very, very excited because this is what we researched for a long time in Singapore on how do we get teachers to archive their learning and to use this learning to help one another. And we discovered, beginning with the initial teacher training, the use of e-portfolios. And in fact, these e-portfolios that we have used have become something that is so exciting among the student teachers that even now in the main academy of the teachers, they all also start using the e-portfolio. So I applaud your effort for this very, very good initiative. And I think we all need to excite ourselves again always in the whole teaching fraternity. In our redefinition of the teacher as a professional, we ask ourselves that the teacher must be grounded at least by 3 major value sets. The first value is that as a teacher, you, more than anybody else, care about the learner. Why are you a teacher? Because you are an expert of the learner. Why are you a teacher? Because you care so much about the learner. Just like a lawyer feels that everybody must be represented, irrespective of if you are a criminal. Just like a doctor who feels that everybody must be attended to, irregardless of what happened to him previously. Similarly, a learner, the focus of the learner, that is the number 1 value of the teacher. The second value that we emphasize is the teacher identity. Who is the teacher? What is the personhood of the teacher? And so this value is about the fact that the teacher is the one who is willing to see himself as a role model of learning. That when the students look at the teacher says, I'm also learning. I'm reading. I'm studying. That quest for high standards of learning is a key characteristic of what I call the teacher identity. And the value number 3 is that the teachers do not work alone. If you are a 3-year-old teacher, you can help a beginning teacher. If you are a 10-year-old teacher, you can help a 5-year experienced teacher, right? And this is what we call a process of mentoring. In other words, teachers do not exist as individuals in the classroom. Teachers exist in community, learning communities, always learning from one another. So these are the kind of the values that we integrate. When you have these values and you build the skills and the knowledge, then you find that teachers have a sense of professionalism. Sorry. So the next thing, another big A I will give to you is the principle of alignment. Many times, teachers do not see the alignment of their development with their career pathing. So, in fact, this was one of the major steps we took that I could say was a major turning point also for the Singapore educational system in terms of the teacher's impact, was where we started to build clearer career pathways. So in Singapore, we have a system whereby a classroom teacher, after going through the system, have the opportunity to be on a teaching track, a leadership track, or a specialist track. So a teacher can choose to be on a teaching track, and yet there will be a career pathway where he grows to become a senior teacher, a master teacher, and a principal master teacher. Why? Because the more we research about teaching, moving from what we call the novice to the expert is a journey. A teacher who is 3 or 4 years experience would have a kind of intuition and teaching in a classroom that's different from a beginning teacher. A beginning teacher, for example, is very concerned with managing the classroom, the content of the teaching. But an experienced teacher, he is able to talk aloud, for example, his thinking process. He will be able to tell the students, how to solve a problem, not just by talking about content, but talking about important problem solving, right? And when he becomes more experienced, you find that very experienced teachers not only are able to talk aloud their thinking process, they are also able to understand each and every student. They can make visible what is going on in the mind of the student, right? So there are different levels of expertise. And so we need to create a vision for the teachers to see that, hey, I can grow to become a master teacher, a principal master teacher, And their role models should be very, very clear, right? So that is why we have a very clear teaching track. And of course the leadership track, because we always need managers, principals, which of course is familiar. And we also have a specialist track, because there are teachers who are very passionate in their subject and curriculum development, and we should hone their skills along this line. So the teachers need to come in seeing that the teaching profession is one with very good career development opportunities. So it's about knowledge, skills, right? And it's about the continuous development. Many, many ways of learning can happen. I think these are familiar to you. Peer collaboration, involvement in induction, involvement in action research, right? Teachers becoming more involved in research and writing, right? Provision of leave for teachers to do that, and having this membership in professional communities. So the next point I want to talk about is what we call the teacher symbolism. Teacher symbolism. And I like to congratulate Italy again for this very wonderful plan, because whatever we do to better the status and the professionalism of teachers is always good for the society. You know why? Because when students respect the teachers, when the society respects the teachers, the society will also pay much more attention to learning. You know, when the young generation don't respect the teachers, the young generation actually are not respecting learning. And you will find that even in the community, they are not going to be so learning from the others. But if they have an attitude that, hey, the teacher is so important a symbol, because the teacher is the one who is going to transmit not only your modern knowledge today, but a lot of your cultural and rich tradition. Every time I come into Italy, even in this building, I am very jealous, because you have so rich history, you know. In Singapore, everything has to be new because we are a new country. But you have the rich history, the heritage. But you ask yourself, how do we transmit a national culture and heritage to the next generation? The teachers. It's not going to doctors or lawyers going to do it for you, but the teachers. So we need to honor the teacher symbolism, which is very, very critical. You will find that countries with very good performance also have very high regard in emphasizing the teacher symbol. In Singapore, I think there's the other thing that we need to mention is to have teachers take what I call an innovative perspective. I think innovation is the word today. And we have this, what we call the diamond crystal, to represent the teacher role as an ethical educator, as a competent professional, as a collaborative learner, as a transformative learner, and a community builder, right? And we are telling the teachers today that the role of the teacher has changed from what I call didactics to dialogic. Because it is not just about the teacher talking to the students, but it's about the teachers creating dialogues among themselves and helping students creating intelligent dialogue for learning. And for this to happen, teachers need to become designers. They got to be good questioners, good partners, right? Good counselors, mediators. And all of this calls for training. Because you and I come from an old generation where didactics predominate. But to lead a classroom in a very collaborative way calls for new skills. So the teacher has to learn, how do I design the learning environment, right? And we all know that new pedagogies today, especially with the provision of technology, allows for lots of collaborative learning, inquiry-based learning. And this is where I heard a lot about the exciting digital plan that is happening in Italy too, you know. Of creating a lot of makers corridor and all that. And all this requires the teachers to have new pedagogical skills. Similarly, in terms of the content and the curriculum, we also have to innovate. And all of this calls for learning on the part of the teachers. We also realize increasingly that our students need to be more holistic in terms of the social and emotional competencies, And in order for all of these things to happen, the teachers themselves also have to be equipped with a lot of these skills, right? Helping students to come to school feeling emotionally safe, feeling emotionally encouraged, right? And being able to have what we call self-directed learning, being an active contributor to the community, being a concerned citizen, and being a confident person. End of the day, you find that the teacher is the figure that provides the leadership to the child, to the youth, and also provide the inspiration. When kids come to the school, they want to see the teacher who is inspiring, the teachers who is leading, and that's where they learn inspirational and leadership skills. So important in today's world. Then I want to talk about the A, which is at the end of the day, the authenticity of our impact. It's about the success of our teacher learning. And all good, successful teacher learning will lead to good students' engagement outcomes. Now, I use the word engagement outcomes, not necessarily just achievement outcomes, right? Because it is not just about test scores per se, but it's about the overall engagement with the student, right? Good PD will lead to better classroom model, better mentoring model, stronger collaborative learning, stronger pedagogical leaderships where teacher says, I tried this new method, and I'm sharing it with the others, bringing in outside expertise, and what I call a sustained professional development. You still need to focus on content, active learning, coherence, pay attention to duration, right, and active participation. So, end of the day, it is not just pedagogical content knowledge, but content as well. Good PD is normally intensive and is sustained, and a very important factor is the collegial learning. When we first started emphasizing professional development in Singapore, we began first with workshops and courses. But later on we realized that actually it is the most powerful mode of professional development is actually teachers, expert teachers, sharing with teachers. And we also realized that teacher learning from one another, the peer learning, the collegial learning is where they create the most powerful ownership. I think we were just saying that this year, the Teacher International Day, right, the key is teacher motivation. And when you talk about teacher motivation, I think we all have to respect the fact that we need to give teacher what we call the ARC, the A-R-C. Number one, the sense of autonomy. The sense of autonomy that this is what I want to learn. The sense of relatedness, that it is not just a kind of a co-command, but a kind of the fact that I want to learn because I work with colleagues whom I'm related to. And a sense of challenge, because I do want to better myself, I do want to learn something new. So, we all lead, care, and inspire. So in short, I think I will conclude that Italia, that's what you have for successful teacher professional development learning. Integrated policy, time for learning, alignment, leadership in the teacher symbolism, innovative perspective, and authenticity of impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You talk about inspiration by learners, and I think that your speech was really very inspiring for us. I'm giving the floor now to Andreas Schleicher from OECD. Please, Andreas, try to stay in 15 minutes, no more. Thank you.
Grazie. And first of all, my congratulations to you, Minister, but more important, my congratulations to Italy for what is a truly compelling plan for professional development. In one way, you can consider this the heart of the Buona Scuola reform, because the quality of schooling, the quality of education will never exceed the quality of teachers. And that has to do with getting the right people to become teachers ensuring ongoing, continuing investment, exactly like you foresee it in the plan. Making sure that those who are very, very good in their profession get recognized for this, advance in their careers, and finally also improving the value of teachers in society. And I want to highlight the last point with one point of data. Here we have actually measured the degree to which teachers perceive their work to be valued by society. And if you are in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Korea, in Abu Dhabi, about 2/3 of teachers feel that their profession is truly valued. In Italy, it's a very small share. Now you can say to yourself, maybe it's not so important, but in fact, when you line this up with the outcomes on PISA, for example, you can see that most countries that do well, that have a high share of top-performing students, also value their teachers in the perception of teachers. It's not so clear in what direction this chart works. Now, it could be that where you invest in your profession, ensure that teachers get the right training, they will do a good job and they will get good results, and society will value this. This is one interpretation. But it could also be where society is valuing teachers. More people want to become teachers, and the profession will be more prestigious. Let's have a look at the heart of professionalism. In the past, we could rely on, telling people what to do once for their lives. Now, today, this is about continuous development, exactly as you foresee it in your plan. It means basically focusing on the internal motivation of educators to become better teachers. Professionalism has sort of three dimensions. One, of course, is the knowledge that teachers have, their competence. Their professional autonomy, the degree of discretion that you give them to shape and design their own learning environments. And the third aspect is also important. The kind of opportunities for collaboration that teachers have to learn and work together. Now, when you look at this triangle, a country like Poland does quite well on all three dimensions. And they're doing well on autonomy, well on knowledge, well on peer networks. A country like Portugal is not doing very well. But there are some countries that are special. As you take a country like Malaysia, very close to Singapore, maybe not so strong on knowledge, not very strong on professional autonomy, but they're very strong culture of peer collaboration. We take the country where I live in, France. Teachers are very well prepared. Their knowledge base is strong. But the discretion they have at the workplace is limited. And the opportunities they have to collaborate is very limited. It's not enough. And then you look at Italy. Actually, teachers have a lot of room in the classroom. But they're often left alone in the classroom. They have the autonomy to do what they think is right. But they're not prepared very well. The level of initial knowledge is not very strong. And interestingly, also the opportunities for collaboration are limited. That's why I think your plan in focusing on building a profession, on focusing on teacher collaboration is so crucially important. Sort of filling the room that teachers have to actually shape the learning environment with meaning, with competence is very, very important. And I want to look at this in a little bit more detail. On the one hand, you can argue, well, teachers in Italy already collaborate. They discuss their work with other teachers. They basically prepare together. They go to conference and so on. But that's quite superficial. That's not yet professional collaboration. If you look at the right side, the bars get a lot shorter. Of course, many teachers teach jointly because that's how you design classrooms. You put two teachers in the classroom. But when you think about, working together to shape the learning environments, the bar is very short. Observing somebody else's classroom. Such a crucial element of professional development, finding out how other teachers teach. Those things do not happen very frequently currently. That is the opportunity that this plan provides. Professional development is not just about sending people back to universities, bringing professionalization into schools every day, every year. There's a lot of room to strengthen the kind of professional collaboration. Another aspect of this, classroom observation. Again, in England, happens everywhere, and principals will tell teachers, what they did well, where they think they can improve, and so on. In other countries, it's other teachers. But when you look In the case of Italy, currently teachers don't hear much back from their work. The principal doesn't talk to them about their professional work. Their colleagues don't talk to them. Management in the school. And strengthening that aspect is so crucially important in building an environment where teachers work with a high degree of professional autonomy, but in a collaborative culture. Why do I say this? Because we have very good evidence at the OECD that the more teachers actually participate in collaboration, the more they are effective in their work, and the more satisfied they are with their profession. Collaboration is a very important key, professional collaboration, to development. I can also show you this with data where teachers teach together. They tend to be more effective. Where teachers observe other people's classrooms, they tend to be more effective. Where they coordinate their activities, where they participate in collaborative professional development. All these things are important ingredients of professionalism and so on. That's why your plan has such a huge potential to change the way in which teachers work and teach. Even more generally, when you measure teachers which have a low degree of professionalism and those who have a high degree of professionalism, you can see actually their perception of the status of teaching changes. As soon as teachers become stronger professionals with more and better training, they see their status rising. They see themselves more satisfied with their job, with their work environment, and they become more effective. Professionalization is the key to better teaching and ultimately better learning outcomes. However well you prepare teachers before they get into the job, what really matters is giving them opportunities to deepen their subject disciplinary knowledge. The world is changing very rapidly. The fields of knowledge as we know them today are advancing very rapidly. Giving teachers an opportunity to keep pace with this is very important. Pedagogy has changed. Now, the kind of challenges teachers face in the classroom these days are very different from what they saw in the past. Thinking about increasing diversity in classrooms. Students are confronted with different phenomena. Teachers are confronted with more diverse student populations, and they have not been prepared for this. However well, sort of advancing the pedagogical knowledge, giving teachers the tools to implement curricular reforms. You're embarking on a major reform. Giving teachers access to this, giving them the instruments, the tools, I think is a very important part of your plan. Let's have a look, finally, at a couple of points relating to this. And this is about the time teachers have to learn. We actually have good evidence that where teachers have more time to actually deepen their professional knowledge, they actually also see a positive impact on this. You can see this most clearly, the positive impact most clearly when you look at the knowledge and understanding of their subject fields. Where teachers deepen their understanding of the subject they teach, they feel that makes a real difference for teaching in the classroom, but also pedagogical competences, evaluation and assessment. We all talk about, modern forms of assessment, formative assessment, helping students learn better, helping teachers to teach better. Those things actually have a deep impact on teachers. Knowledge of the curriculum. Don't take it for granted. Technological skills. Very, very important. Where this kind of professional development is provided, we see very, very strong results in either a moderate or even a large change in the way in which teachers teach. So good professional development really makes a difference. Now, when you look at the demand for it, now this is about the average. And you can see teaching students with special needs is something that many teachers struggle with. Technology, new technologies in the workplace, student behavior. Many teachers are struggling with them. When you look at the bars for Italy, they're even longer than on average across countries. You have a very large share of teachers now that don't feel sufficiently prepared for the challenges they meet. According to their own views, this is the data that we get from teachers themselves. Why don't they do this? Italian teachers are on most dimensions like teachers in other countries. They say they don't have time, conflicts with my schedule. But there are two factors where
Do you see a difference? The first is many teachers say there are no incentives for me to do this. I can do that, and then tomorrow I'm going to be in the same situation. Nobody's going to look at this. And this is exactly where your plan provides such a golden opportunity to provide a reason, a consistent pathway for this to happen. The second part that stands out is there is no relevant professional development offered. And I put the emphasis on relevant. Something happens, but it doesn't make a difference to teaching in the classroom. It doesn't help me with my daily practice. Those are areas where there's a big gap today and where the plan offers the prospect of closing that gap. It's also true for other countries, but certainly in the case of Italy. Now, we have studied professional development across countries quite a bit, and we have come to 4 points that are really at the heart of strong professional development, and you find them all reflected in the plan. In a sense, your plan is less innovative than you might think. Most advanced education systems do something very similar already. And that's a good thing. It gives you sort of the confidence that actually these kind of strategies are actually ones that most advanced education systems are pursuing. The first thing is focus. Being very clear on what you want to achieve with this. And this is something that your plan spells out. And this is also where the biggest threat will come. Tomorrow when the plan is published, everybody will come and say, but you should also do this and also do that and put something more and more onto this. Try to resist that pressure, because high-level professional development is being very clear about what the priorities are, as you have spelled out in the plan now. It's basically ensuring the right balance between disciplinary knowledge and pedagogical knowledge, but it's also about ensuring that teachers have room to observe, to experiment, to innovate new methods, giving them the space to actually become designers, innovators in the instructional process. Also, trying to find a good connection between what's important for the school systems, for the school, but also what you know about where teachers want to go. You have very common, very important goals for the system, but you also need to understand what are the goals of each and every individual teacher, what they want to pursue in their lives. You heard from Singapore, there are quite different career pathways in the Singaporean education system. Teachers have quite different ways to actually choose where they want to go. So finding out what does each and every teacher really want to achieve in their lives, and then trying to align that with the goals of the school and goals of the system is something very, very important. I think your portfolio approach is the right instrument to do that, and to basically have a digital platform that actually tracks where teachers are and how they are developing, gives administrators, leaders, school leaders a tool to track that. But listening carefully to teachers is important. Basically creating a motivation for professional knowledge, giving teachers the opportunity to become innovative, the capacity to validate innovation. One of the distinguishing features of professionalism is you don't do what you think is good. You do what you know is effective. And that is really where professionalism distinguishes itself from just pure autonomy. You have a very deep knowledge of professional practice, professional wisdom that is owned by the profession. And you have tools to actually validate your ideas. And also bring those ideas to scale in the classrooms, ensuring that good ideas do not rest within the four walls of a classroom, but good ideas travel through the system. Schools learn from it, the system learns from it. And finally, leadership. That's been already highlighted. That's very important, where school leaders do not wholeheartedly support professionalism. It's very, very hard to make it happen. Now, how do countries reward it? It's very different across countries. About half of the countries reward outstanding performance in teachers in the way they pay teachers. They also reward higher than minimum teacher certification. So if teachers actually go through professional development, get better grading, this is actually respected in the system and so on. There are different ways in which teachers reflect this in the salary scales. Honestly, at the OECD, we do not judge this to be crucially important. The pay side is, of course, one part of the dimension, but professionalism goes much beyond this. And the kind of career incentives, the incentive to development, to become a better teacher, has actually a much more profound impact than the financial parts of this. The last point I want to make is this is something to work on. When you ask teachers, is being innovative, being actually recognized, rewarded, and sort of incentivized in the system, is only 1/4 of teachers who currently see that their work environment where they go every day is innovation friendly. 3/4 of teachers still see the school as an environment where they are told what to do, but it gives them very little space to actually try out new ideas and being recognized for this. So this is something to work on as the plan, but I do see that this plan provides a fantastic opportunity to do that. And I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Andreas Schleicher too for another very inspiring and important presentation of these principles. I'll try later to underline the correspondence of some of these basic principles OECD is working about with our national plan, just describing the pillars and the priorities we choose. And now the third and not last speech by Jordan Naidoo from UNESCO. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, distinguished colleagues and guests, it's a real honor and a pleasure to participate in this discussion this morning. First, it's always a challenge following Andreas, since he presents a lot of data and interesting graphs that show the situation both for Italy but also globally. As the Minister said earlier, one of the key developments in the last year, in September 2015, was the adoption of the Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. And central to that agenda is Goal 4 on education. And the education goal is quite clear. It's to ensure equitable, quality, lifelong learning for all. And I think, it comes at a real critical moment that Italy is adopting a new plan on teachers, because we cannot deliver on quality education and lifelong learning without teachers being at the center of it. So the plan, I think, is really, in some ways, while Andreas said it's not really innovative, I think in terms of addressing the challenge and addressing also taking advantage of the opportunities that now exist, it is groundbreaking for Italy to focus in on teachers as a central element. So it was quite interesting to read the plan through, although only in summary because I cannot read Italian, which I must apologize for. But just before we look at the question of teachers within the plan, I wanted to make one or two general comments about Agenda 2030, which I think is quite important. The first one is that it goes beyond the MDGs. The MDGs was a plan that was developed by, technocrats within the UN building in New York. But the SDGs was a consultative process that took, nearly 3 to 4 years involving citizens in country. There was global consultation online, member states, governments were involved, but also civil society, including teachers. And I think what's important about the new plan is that it is comprehensive. It focuses, the Secretary General always refers to the 5 Ps: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. And I think what's significant about the focus on teachers and your plan is that it incorporates all 5 of those Ps, in that it reflects a true partnership between government and the key stakeholder in education, teachers. But it also brings into account the desires and wants of parents and of the learner him and herself. So I think that also reflects the overall agenda. The other important point to make about the plan is that it addresses the 3 key dimensions of development: economic, social, and environmental. And, we have to recognize that teachers, as Professor Tan said, teachers are a critical element for culture. they're a critical element for preserving our planet, because they are the purveyors of knowledge and skills that are so fundamental to ensuring a sustainable future. So I think that's a second important point. And the third point I want to make, and this has come up often, is that, when we have the MDGs and education for all, it was largely focused on developing countries. We were only looking at, the Chads of the world, Niger, countries, in China and India. But it is recognized clearly, no matter what income level or development level you are, it affects us all. And I think Italy and this plan clearly recognizes that. We live in a global community, and what happens in one country affects the others. And I think that is also quite important. I'd like to move on. The other important point I think about the agenda, which is important in some ways looking at the specifics of the plan, is this recognition of lifelong learning. I want to go back to a very old document. I think those of you who are my age will remember the Delors report of '93, which had the 4 elements of learning to know, learning to be, learning to do, and learning to live together. And I think that is still relevant today. And very much so. And one of the points of Delors is the fact of wanting to create a learning society. And without teachers at the center, we cannot create a learning society. So the plan, in a way, recognizes that if we are to turn schools into true learning organizations and the society as a whole ensuring lifelong learning, we have to pay attention to the fact of teachers' development throughout their career, from induction to their retirement. And I think this is a critical principle of the plan which really stands out. Again, I think I've made a number of points here, but I just want to highlight the 2 points. As the Minister said, education is a human right. And I think if we are to deliver on that right for every child, youth, and adult, we have to have teachers at the center. And I also saw in the plan there is an issue of recognizing that we have to pay attention to those that are excluded, whether we talk about those with disabilities or those that are excluded with the new skills, access to, you don't want to create a digital divide, both amongst teachers, but amongst the population as a whole. So that's a critical element. One of the points about the agenda, and this applies to whether you talk about a country like Italy, the US, China, or the least developed, it is an ambitious plan, and it will cost more if we are to deliver on the promise to all the people of our countries. So I'm glad that the plan has a clear commitment to investment. This is really important because there are 2 slogans which appear to be cast in our discussions. We heard it over and over last week in New York after the 1-year anniversary of the adoption of the goals. Everybody said it cannot be business as usual or no one should be left behind. And I think there's a real danger that both of them can just become slogans. But I'm glad that you have a plan that looks implementable and commits to it becoming really in practice rather than just remaining slogans. So that's really important. And this is a lesson we are learning across the world as we engage in consultations in different countries. Those countries who are committed to the new agenda are setting up processes, plans, and structures, but also making sure that the requisite investment follows their plans. And I think that will be a key difference from what we did before, is to make sure that it's implementable plans with actual resources being dedicated to whatever goal we set. Just again, as a reminder, we have 10 targets, and I'm not going to go through all of those targets, but global citizenship is a critical new area. It includes the whole scope of living together, of ensuring peace, but also focusing on education for sustainable development. And I think in the plan itself, we see elements of that reflected. And if we are to change the nature of humanity and what we mean in terms of our obligation to each other within our countries, but also globally, teachers are critical to that role. So I just wanted to focus on the aspect of teachers for a minute in that. Well, as we've said, and Andreas pointed out, one of the challenges for Italy has been the question of quality. You know, in most countries that we know of in the developed world, access is not an issue at most levels. Perhaps, you know, we need to look at access to higher education in a more critical way. But in basic education, we more or less reach 100% across almost all of the OECD countries and many developing countries, in fact. You know, the global average on primary education is over 95%. But the problem, even in the most developed countries, you know, my own children have gone to school in the US, but I'm not critically satisfied with the quality of education, not just performance and achievement. I think in equipping them to be global citizens, the US falls far short. And as the minister pointed out, one of the problems for the US is language. They do not address the issue of foreign language. You know, I insisted my daughter take Spanish as a second language because I felt clearly, living in any big city in the US, you cannot survive if you aren't able to communicate with other people. So I think that's a critical element, is to look at what does quality mean. And I think this is the important point about the new agenda. While we have a global framework for monitoring with certain, you know, 11 indicators for global, the recognition of the agenda is that it has to be situated and contextualized locally. It has to apply to countries' own national development plans. And I think the focus on teachers within your own legislation that you've conducted over the last 2 years clearly reflects the contextualization of the global approach to the priorities for Italy, which I think is an important point. As I've said, the central point of that is well-qualified, motivated teachers. And both Professor Tan and Andreas pointed out the importance of motivation. And the data from OECD points out that motivation is not always or only about salaries. Salaries, teachers have to be paid a decent wage. They have to be paid. They're part of a middle and upper middle class in most countries, so they need that status. But however, motivation involves many other things, including an ongoing support through professional development. And the evidence from, as Andreas and Professor pointed out, not only from Singapore, from Finland, across the world, Malaysia, whichever country that has made progress, dramatic progress in the last few years, recognizes that point. And the other, I think, point that I want to emphasize that both have made is the changing landscape, both the work issues in terms of technology, in terms of new skills, new competencies required, both for teachers themselves, but also for the children that they are imparting knowledge and skills to. You cannot be a good teacher and expect your children to learn new skills if you don't have those same skills that's required in life. So I think this is an important shift in thinking. And we can come back to that point in a little while. The other point I think we wanted to make in terms of the agenda is that while we focus on Goal 4, we cannot ignore that Goal 4 is ultimately linked to every other goal, every one of the 17 goals. I just chose 5 of them because they specifically mention education in the target. So if we expect so much of teachers, they're not only improving education, they're improving the life of all of us across all aspects of life. We do not live in little boxes. So this is the other important point about the professional development that is accorded to teachers. They're expected to, as Professor Tan said, they're expected to be, purveyors of knowledge, but also purveyors and continuity, ensuring the cultural dimension of society is maintained. But they are also counselors and mediators and ensure that kids grow up healthy, with values that the country treasures. So I think this is an important point. But ultimately, again, we also live in a hard-nosed reality of economic development. And without that, we cannot expect growth and to reach all the other goals. Teachers are critical to that aspect of life as well. Again, I just wanted to touch, and I'll briefly, since we are in the interest of time, move on. Just wanted to make a point that, the one challenge globally, and I think even for Italy over time you will face that, is not only the quality of teachers, but just numbers. It will increasingly affect every country. I think, even for the most developed countries with the aging population and so on, the transition of teachers out of the system, how do you fill the gap? With younger teachers, as you induct new teachers, there's always a challenge. And one of the things, you have to make sure that teaching remains an attractive profession. Otherwise, you won't recruit the best. And I think it's been proven, both with Singapore and Finland, the status of the teacher matters. And they are able to get the top 10, 15% of graduates. And if you can't ensure that, you're not going to get quality. Just wanted to say 2 points here, and I think Andreas did, and I am thankful to OECD and its recent education at a glance statistics. One of the interesting points from the education at a glance was both the salary levels compared to the OECD average. Salaries for primary teachers are at 76% of the average, and at secondary and upper secondary, it's much closer to the average. So I think there's a question about remuneration and how it's addressed. But the most striking statistic for me was that close to 60 to 70% of teachers, 6 out of every 10 are over 50 years. And this, I think, presents a particular problem in terms of regeneration of the profession. So it's something I think, I didn't explicitly see in the plan. Perhaps it's in the longer document, and I wasn't able to read Italian, but that's something. Then the other interesting dynamic, and this varies, and it's somewhat common to many countries, is the gender composition. And we find, particularly in primary education, over 80% are female. And this is a question, do you need a more diverse workforce, both in terms of reflecting gender, but also as the society culturally changes, it has to reflect that. I just wanted to say one key point in terms of the overall way we are going to monitor the SDGs. It's very complicated in the UN system, and you can see multiple boxes there, which is quite confusing. But I just wanted to focus on UNESCO and the Global Education Monitoring Report. For education, UNESCO will continue through the Global Education Monitoring Report and the UNESCO Institute of Statistics to monitor overall progress, at least against the 11 global indicators. We also have a set of, again, very confusing thematic indicators, 43 indicators, which is a menu of indicators which countries will choose from that most appropriately apply to them. One of the challenges in the whole monitoring has been the long time that it has taken to reach agreement. And even at this stage, we do not have final agreement on even the global indicators. They were supposed to be endorsed at the UN General Assembly last week, but it seems that the interagency expert group on education is continuing to meet. We'll meet in October, later this month in Addis Ababa, and make a final recommendation for the global indicators for all 17 to be adopted in March next year, 2017. So we are a bit concerned that it's delaying the process. But I think for education, we are quite well off in a sense, because I think the community, most countries have more or less agreed on those 11 and are already collecting the data relative to that. The two big challenges, and this comes to both something Andreas and Professor Tan raised, is while we need to ensure support and participation, there's also an issue of accountability. And how do we measure the inputs we put into teacher development? And student outcomes is an important measure. So we do have to look across the 7 targets or the 10 targets. How do we ensure that we are measuring the appropriate things, from the basic skills of literacy, numeracy, to more higher order skills, the 21st century skills, but also the social, emotional skills that teachers are supposed to be responsible for. So we have to look at it in a much more holistic manner. I just wanted to make one last point about overall, at a global level, UNESCO is has convened a global steering committee which comprises representation from 19 member states, 3 from the Europe and North America. And we continue to meet once a year and will play a key role in the monitoring and also in advocacy and communication, as well as mobilizing greater commitment from all countries towards the agenda. The last point, I just wanted to make 2 points here, and I'm perhaps repeating myself. There's always a point of saying money does not matter. It does matter. We do need greater investment. We have a much bigger agenda. We are hoping to do more. We can do more efficiently. We need to reduce wastage and leakage and corruption and every aspect of it. We need greater accountability, but it has to be a bigger pot. And so the second point of that, even if we put more money in, it doesn't automatically mean we will get more. We need to work at it and make sure we set up the structure processes for accountability. There have been a lot of criticisms about the SDGs, that they are too grand, they hope to achieve too much, but they are aspirational. We have 15 years. I think if we commit at every level, they will be achievable. The last, as I've already made this point, and I think the plan itself reflects this not business as usual, but it has to be commitment in real terms. It cannot just be a plan that sits there. So I really sympathize with the Minister, because going ahead over the next year will be the nuts and bolts of actually implementing it. And that always leads to challenges, but I think in this context, it's a real opportunity to do things differently and to turn around a lot of the statistics that Andreas presented. I think that's where the beauty of the plan is. It recognizes that there are certain deficiencies in the system at every level, and it tries to address it. So I think, and it's systematic about it. And finally, and I think this is a key about the overall agenda, it's a collective responsibility. It's not just government, it's not just, academics, it's everyone's. It's from the learner in the classroom to the parent at the home, to business, to all sectors of society. And everybody is accountable. I think that's the critical point. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think that the main point I would like to summarize that our discussion, our strong effort in Italy to identify education as one of the basic priorities of our political agenda is not a national issue, it's a global one. And all the different inspiring topics you underlined in the 3 speeches we heard this morning really, in my opinion, can support this effort. And I think that just going forward, sorry, it's a bit late, I would like to comment, but there is no time today. Yes, I can demonstrate that our effort, I say, belongs to these values, skills, and knowledge framework that from different points of view all of you described today. Thanks a lot. And just another thing in English, and then I'm going to shift to my mother tongue. We underline the importance of foreign language acquisition, so it could be a very good exercise for also native speakers of language present today. Sorry for not having a simultaneous translation, but I think you have an English version of our slides. Well, just to say that we'll have a very important, I should define it, tremendous opportunity to present these issues from the Italian point of view next year, because we'll be the hosting country of G7, and we are hardly working in order to put in this path, in this international track, all the issues, not simply the national plan, which is so important, but it's not only this topic we touch with our school reform. And as you said, Jordan, at the end of your speech, this is really a very collective effort. This is a collective responsibility, and this is the point of view we try to put the educational issues in this country. Thanks a lot. Bene, io passo rapidamente a... Sorry, yes, thank you. Sì. a illustrare a questo punto i punti salienti di questo piano nazionale. Qual è, scusate? No, ecco. Perfetto. Cercando di mettere molto velocemente in risalto gli aspetti di metodo e di merito che sono inseriti in esso, come ha detto tra gli altri Jordan Naidoo, si tratta di un piano che necessariamente deve essere implementato ed è anche perfezionabile nel tempo, ma parte già da alcune novità eccezionali per il nostro Paese. Primo, formazione obbligatoria e strutturale e permanente per tutti gli insegnanti, parliamo di 750.000 docenti nel Paese, risorse nuove, fresche e di un certo peso, 1.400 miliardi, considerando ovviamente l'autoformazione della card docente più i 325 milioni che sono stanziati, già disponibili per il triennio, e poi a seguire naturalmente si dovrà, non spetterà a noi, continuare su questa linea. La individuazione di 9 aree prioritarie che vedrete rientrano sostanzialmente nei basic points che sono stati sottolineati sia da professor Tang che da Andreas Schleicher e che quindi sono in pratica i temi di cui c'è bisogno oggi per ripensare il modello di insegnamento e di apprendimento, e il tema cruciale degli standard professionali per i docenti, e cioè la possibilità a ciascun docente del nostro Paese di avere un piano individuale di sviluppo professionale. Questo chiaramente è un primo passo per immaginare un percorso di crescita professionale, di diciamo anche valorizzazione della funzione docente. Queste cose le abbiamo già riassunte, quindi non vado un po' velocemente. Gli obiettivi del piano, vediamoli insieme, sono credo molto chiari. Dare unitarietà e omogeneità nel rispetto dell'autonomia di ogni singola scuola, perché questo è un principio, quello dell'autonomia fondamentale, riguarda sia il singolo insegnante che il progetto educativo della scuola, ma omogeneità significa che gli interventi di formazione finalmente rispondano a standard indicati a livello nazionale che a loro volta, la dimostrazione plastica l'abbiamo avuta questa mattina, si collegano a un framework internazionale. Definire con chiarezza le priorità del prossimo triennio, e questo lo facciamo subito, assicurare la qualità dei percorsi formativi, perché certamente non stiamo qui a dire che in Italia non ci sia mai stata formazione, insomma ci sono agenzie, enti e strutture di ricerca che hanno fortemente contribuito alla crescita della classe docente di questo Paese, penso a Indire che insomma lavora dentro il Ministero come agenzia anche deputata a questo, ma non c'è mai stato un framework, un progetto, un piano nazionale che indichi gli standard e ne assicuri il rispetto. La valorizzazione del tema fondamentale della scuola come di ogni altra parte della società, cioè l'innovazione continua, perché una società che cambia con la rapidità che sappiamo e che non ci consente oggi di sapere quali competenze, quali lavori, quali professionalità serviranno non tra un secolo, ma tra 5 anni, è chiaro che per questo modello diciamo in trasformazione continua di società, di mondo del lavoro, di struttura economica e culturale, è necessaria una scuola che sia in grado di guidare il cambiamento e non di seguirlo, e la funzione degli insegnanti è ovviamente prioritaria in questo senso. E poi sullo sviluppo professionale l'abbiamo detto. Le risorse le ho già citate, le vedete qui esplicitamente diciamo scandite nei diversi capitoli già previsti e indicati dalla legge. Le priorità sono 9 aree che sostanzialmente, vediamo se c'è una parte, manca una che era, no scusa, no, va bene, allora le dico diciamo, si possono raggruppare in 3 sostanzialmente blocchi. Questo primo blocco riguarda, no, non corrispondono più, vabbè lo stesso, perché mi sembra interessante presentarlo in questo modo, ve lo dico. Ci sono competenze che io direi di sistema, e sono l'autonomia didattica e organizzativa, la valutazione e il miglioramento della qualità dell'insegnamento, la didattica per competenze e l'innovazione metodologica. Poi ci sono competenze che sostanzialmente sono quelle che servono nei tempi attuali, ma che sono già in prospettiva proiettate verso il futuro, le lingue straniere, che già dovrebbero essere un solido pilastro dell'educazione, anche della formazione degli insegnanti, ma che con molta sincerità non lo sono mai state nel nostro Paese, le competenze digitali, e questo lo sanno anche i nostri relatori, si abbina alla già avvenuta non solo presentazione ma anche implementazione in corso del Piano nazionale della scuola digitale, e l'alternanza scuola-lavoro, che è un altro dei pilastri del nostro innovamento sul piano didattico. Poi le competenze che servono per una scuola che io definirei più inclusiva e più rispondente ai bisogni di una global citizenship, di una società stratificata sempre di più nel bisogno dell'individuo, che è diverso da persona a persona, ma è anche diverso da segmento della società a segmento della società. Mi veniva in mente mentre parlavo, dico due parole in inglese. When you were talking, when you were presenting your speech today, you reminded me to a wonderful sentence and concept, more than sentence, that Shimon Peres told me. Had the opportunity to meet him in June in Tel Aviv. We had a long discussion about very many issues, but he focused, of course, considering my current position, the Italian government on education. And he said, you know, democracies are shifting now from the right to be equal to the right to be different. And I think that education must really take into account this so simple difference between these two visions of the world, and the new context will encourage all of us who have in our hands so big responsibilities to orientate our models to this direction. Cioè, quindi dal diritto di essere uguali al diritto di essere diversi. Cioè, questo è una banale, no, tutto sommato assunzione, ma che apre, almeno a me lo ha fatto, un mondo. E scusate, mi permetto anche di fare un ricordo in questa sede di un grande personaggio che purtroppo ci ha lasciato pochi giorni fa. Allora, torniamo al piano dell'inclusione, della formazione degli insegnanti. Quindi integrazione, competenze di cittadinanza e cittadinanza globale, inclusione e disabilità, su cui la scuola italiana ha già un percorso molto avanzato di grande tradizione, e coesione sociale e prevenzione di quello che in tutto il mondo a vari livelli, dai centri alle periferie, è il disagio giovanile. Le dimensioni, diciamo, possiamo definirle così, e quindi gli obiettivi anche della formazione sono quelli che vedete qui citati. Esigenze nazionali, miglioramento della singola scuola e sviluppo personale e professionale di ogni docente. Sostanzialmente, se ci riflettete, questo è uno schema che ricalca con la stessa, diciamo, tipologia di livelli e stratificazione di livelli il piano della valutazione, cioè si lavora a livello nazionale, si lavora a livello di istituto, si lavora a livello di singola persona, che, come diceva, mi sembra, Andreas, non va mai lasciato solo. Non solo i ragazzi non vanno lasciati soli, ma nemmeno gli insegnanti devono essere soli in una scuola che crea sempre maggiore complessità e quindi richiede sempre maggiore impegno, competenze e anche sistema di conoscenza complesso. Alcune delle priorità, ma le abbiamo già viste, sono naturalmente a livello nazionale, e poi farò un esempio di come ci stiamo muovendo, la formazione linguistica. Perché la formazione linguistica? Perché qui pesco come al solito un po' dal mio, chiunque si occupi di language acquisition e di insegnamento e apprendimento di lingue straniere sa benissimo che non è la quantità, solo la quantità delle ore di lingua, è il modo in cui si insegna la lingua e la competenza di chi la insegna. Quindi avere insegnanti che, anche insegnando discipline diverse dalla lingua, matematica, storia, filosofia, sono in grado di fare lezione in lingua straniera con una certificazione ovviamente di livello adeguata, significa dare un'opportunità molto più efficace di raggiungimento delle soglie di competenza degli studenti, perché poi tutto questo di cui parliamo ovviamente ha un obiettivo finale, che è quello che i nostri ragazzi abbiano una quality education. Come diceva Jordan, nei paesi avanzati, l'Italia è tra essi, il problema non è l'accesso all'istruzione, il problema è quella, diciamo, quella obbligatoria. Il problema è l'accesso a un'educazione, a un'istruzione di qualità, che è una cosa diversa. Gli standard professionali sono naturalmente un altro elemento importante, estremamente innovativo. Io credo che questo davvero nel tempo creerà uno straordinario cambiamento culturale nel mondo della scuola, perché cosa significa? Significa riconoscere esplicitamente che quella dell'insegnante è una professione complessa, che ha bisogno di attenzione, che ha bisogno di strumenti, che ha bisogno di identificazione di un percorso di carriera che non necessariamente, perlomeno non nel nostro modello, non con questa legge, significa avere generali, colonnelli e tenenti, ma significa dire ci sono insegnanti esperti che possono dare un contributo in un senso, ci sono insegnanti meno esperti che possono dare un contributo in un altro senso, e l'architettura complessa della scuola deve tener conto di queste differenziazioni e poterle valorizzare. Senza un portfolio che raccolga la storia formativa e professionale di ciascuno degli insegnanti, tutto questo è impossibile. Infatti non è mai avvenuto. Ecco, questo è il portfolio docente, ora qui forse si va anche un pochino nel dettaglio, ma insomma giusto due battute. Si tratta di un'anagrafe delle professionalità, quindi la storia formativa, le esperienze professionali, non solo quelle didattiche, poi la progettazione, la documentazione e la riflessione individuale sull'attività didattica, e naturalmente l'aggiornamento con le proposte di sviluppo professionale del docente, perché ciascuno può vedere in se stesso delle potenzialità di avanzamento che magari non necessariamente sono legate a quelle di quella scuola o addirittura del piano nazionale. E ora vediamo agli strumenti, no? Perché queste sono le cose poi, come dire, molto molto concrete, che ci danno la misura di quanto lavoro sia già pronto per essere diciamo attivato. Si articolerà così la formazione: una cabina di regia che si occupa nazionale, che si occupa quindi degli standard nazionali, che cura tutta questa materia che ho sostanzialmente descritto nelle priorità e nelle fasi finora, che identifica gli standard di qualità in collegamento con i benchmark internazionali. Le istituzioni di riferimento sono queste qui rappresentate e altre che comunque lavorano a livello internazionale nella definizione dei benchmark oggettivi. Per le lingue, per esempio, questo è un dato assodato da decenni, per altre discipline il discorso è più recente, ma ovviamente grazie al cielo esistono standard a cui potersi riferire. Una task force regionale che dia, perché il nostro è un paese appunto 10 volte diceva il professor Tang Singapore, non è naturalmente gli Stati Uniti, però è un paese di 60 milioni di abitanti con una struttura regionale, provinciale, molto diffusa, e quindi non si può pensare dal centro alla scuola. È chiaro che la nostra rete degli uffici scolastici regionali e di tutta, diciamo, l'architettura già esistente sul territorio dovrà essere sostenuta attraverso una, anche lì, preparazione e delle risorse destinate. E queste sono già previste all'interno del piano come voce destinata a questo. E questi sono i due livelli, e poi vedete, insomma, ho già riassunto quali sono gli obiettivi che ciascuno di essi ha. Un esempio concreto, ecco, io qui faccio sempre riferimento alla concretezza, come si fa agli esami universitari. Mi faccio un esempio per vedere se lo studente ha capito, e me lo faccio da sola. Allora, qual è il lavoro, per esempio, che ci prefiggiamo di fare nell'arco di questo triennio con le lingue straniere, che sono uno dei devil case della preparazione scolastica dei nostri ragazzi, e quindi di sfondo di quella dei nostri insegnanti. Portare a livello B1 20.000 docenti, che quindi è la massa critica che è stato calcolato, può essere coinvolta e deve essere coinvolta nell'insegnamento della lingua seconda. Portare a livello B2 25.000 docenti della scuola primaria, immaginando e ritenendo che più precocemente si parte con una qualità dell'insegnamento della lingua seconda e meglio si fa e migliori risultati si ottengono, e 10.000 di questi formarli con insistenza, direi ossessiva, sull'insegnamento clearly content language cos'è? Integrated, thank you, learning, che significa quel che ho detto prima, cioè insegnare e imparare una lingua non come oggetto di studio, ma attraverso i contenuti di altre discipline, che è la cosa più efficace che esista al mondo ad oggi. Poi, portare a livello B2 per 10.000 docenti, il potenziamento linguistico e metodologico per 10.000 docenti di lingua, la formazione CLIL per 15.000 docenti, questo non è la primaria, è il secondo livello, e portare a livello C1 i 20.000 docenti di discipline non linguistiche per la scuola superiore, perché scusate, qui non c'è scritto, ma ve l'ho già detto, infanzia e primaria al primo livello, media e superiore. Quindi sono bisogni differenziati, numeri differenziati e attività di formazione differenziate, per arrivare, come vedete, a un C1 che è già un ottimo livello di competenza linguistica per la scuola superiore, e invece avere la garanzia di un B2 che è comunque un livello soglia necessario per poter dire che si insegna qualcosa in un'altra lingua. Secondo esempio, anche questo è importante, la scuola inclusiva, inclusive education, è un altro delle issue fondamentali nel dibattito internazionale, non possiamo certamente trascurarla e non lo faremo, e qui si tratta di avere l'inclusione e la disabilità come fondamentali, diciamo, obiettivi, e quindi didattica inclusiva sfruttando anche le tecnologie digitali, la formazione specifica in relazione anche alle singole disabilità. Qui c'è tutto il capitolo della delega sulla disabilità che sta parallelamente declinando questo tema, ma insomma il tema è un po' questo: avere una formazione generale di tutti gli insegnanti su cosa significa il bisogno educativo speciale e o disabilità in apprendimento, ma avere anche una specializzazione specifica. Faccio anche qui un esempio concreto sulla lingua dei segni. Non è che puoi dire che l'insegnante che è stato genericamente formato sulla disabilità è in grado di insegnare la lingua dei segni, allora deve avere una preparazione specifica per quel tipo di bisogno educativo. E poi le altre cose che vedete sull'integrazione, guardo all'ultimo piano per esempio, delle competenze che riguardano la cittadinanza globale e l'integrazione dei bambini non nati in Italia o, se nati in Italia, di seconda o terza generazione, non necessariamente cresciuti in famiglie italofone, e qui anche in questo caso la legge introduce un'importante innovazione, cioè finalmente riconoscimento e valorizzazione della specializzazione dell'insegnamento dell'italiano L2, perché non è che se uno è parlante nativo vuol dire che sa insegnare l'italiano a chi non è parlante nativo, per dirla con molta crudezza. Ecco, io credo che, e chiudo con una cosa che però mi sta a cuore, eccolo qui. Questa è, diciamo, la forma generale del piano, con risorse, obiettivi, strumenti, metodi e tempi, che sono il triennio. C'è un altro fatto fondamentale: non c'è avanzamento di metodo e di merito senza un'attività di ricerca di base. È inutile discutere, la didattica non è qualcosa che si sperimenta in classe solamente sulla base dell'empatia del singolo insegnante, della sua capacità comunicativa. Tutte doti fondamentali, sono in aggiunta quando ci sono, o sono da alimentare quando non ci sono, attraverso anche la formazione. Ma c'è comunque la necessità che questo link nel nostro paese molto debole fino ad oggi tra università, centri di ricerca e quindi il partenariato scienza-education sia assolutamente rafforzato. Citavo prima il G7 che darà a questo Ministero due responsabilità primarie, Education e Science and Technology, sono due G7 separati, ma noi vediamo un ponte che è un ponte di metodo, di merito, è un ponte anche, lasciatemi dire, di fondo culturale, perché fondamentalmente tutto quello di cui parliamo può avvenire solo in una società che valorizzi soprattutto la ricerca scientifica, che è alla base di tutte le considerazioni che facciamo, sia che si parli di didattica delle lingue, sia che si parli di cellule staminali, sia che si parli di energia e cambiamento climatico. Quindi questo è l'approccio. E queste sono I'm going to say a few words in English just to conclude. All of you, in different way, today told us thanks for the kind words about this plan, but you underlined it's a very ambitious one, and we are aware that when you have an ambition, a strong ambition, you have also to face an equal and strong challenge. We know that we have a huge responsibility in our hands. The expectations are so high, and we'll do our best starting from today, and thanks for being here and contributing to our strong effort to give to our country a better quality education. Thank you.